We look at how the Baltimore Ravens have set up Lamar Jackson to potentially win his second NFL MVP award in 2023. We talk about that and so much more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making us your first listen each and every day on Locked On Ravens. Free and available, of course, all podcasting platforms, including over in video form on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back on another Monday show. We're getting closer and closer to training camp. We're so close. We just have a couple more weeks to go here. And if you're new to the show, welcome in. If you are an everyday, you listen every day, welcome back, and thank you for your support. If you're somewhere in the middle, welcome back to the show. We are 5 days a week, so if you want Ravens news, analysis, updates, we have it here for you Monday through Friday. No off days on the weekdays for me here on Locked On Ravens. And I'm excited to get into another week of episodes here. Talking about first in this first segment, Lamar Jackson. His second MVP potentially coming this year. Obviously, nothing's happened yet, but the Ravens, I think, have set him up nicely to have an MVP season this year. So we'll talk about if Lamar Jackson's second MVP season is incoming, how the Ravens will set him up for that potentially. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about the Marlon Humphrey, Rock Ya-Sin duo at cornerback. Last week, we talked a bit about the young guys at cornerback who has to step up, if there are going to be enough guys to step up. But I want to talk about the two big guys, Marlon Humphrey obviously being the star, then Rock Ya-Sin being, I'd say, a solid number 2, number 3 option. Then finally, we'll take a look back at the 2023 draft a little bit. Obviously, still very early to tell whether Zay Flowers is the right pick or not, but early indications about just what we've seen, what we've heard about from Zay Flowers, and whether he feels like the right pick at this point. Although I do know, again, that, look, he hasn't even played a snap yet. So there's a long way to go before determining if he was the right pick or not. So let's get into it here first. Lamar Jackson is his second MVP incoming. Obviously won the unanimous MVP in 2019 after an incredible season. Now, let's first go back and look at his year that year. Went 13-2 as a starting quarterback of the Ravens, played in 15 games that year. And obviously the game he didn't play was the Pittsburgh game, last game of the season when the Ravens opted to rest their guys. And look, I know that was a very controversial decision in terms of whether they should have rested him or started him. I think the fan base was pretty split. Some people really wanted him to play because they didn't want the rust factor. Other people really wanted him to rest because, as we had seen, Mark Ingram got injured in that Cleveland game. And if I recall, Mark Andrews, I think, also got injured in the Cleveland game. Maybe he got injured in the Tennessee game early. I really wiped that end of the year from my memory. But Lamar had 265 completions out of 401 attempts that year for 66.1%, 3,127 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. That was a 9 touchdown percentage, 9.0 touchdown percentage. I think that was the second or third best in NFL history at the time on at least 400 attempts. If I'm not mistaken, I might be remembering it a tad bit wrong, but 9% touchdown percentage is incredible. For reference, he hasn't hit more than 6.9 over the course of his other 4 seasons. Also, we can't forget about the rushing that year too, because that is a big part of his game. Ended up carrying the ball 176 times, 1,206 yards, and 7 touchdowns for an average yards per carry of 6.9, averaged at 8.4 yards per game. Now, for Jackson, it's interesting when you're talking about this year, because I mentioned the 401 pass attempts. 2019, that was the most pass attempts he's had in his career. He's kind of hovered right around that 350 mark. If you kind of average it out, 376 in 2020, 382 in 2021, and 326 in 2022. And what I mean is after the 2019 season has hovered around that 350 mark. With Odell coming in, with Zay Flowers coming in, Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, Nelson Aguilar, obviously Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely and all those guys, with Todd Monken at the helm, we're expecting Lamar. A lot of people are expecting Lamar to throw the ball a lot more than he ever has, where, it might not be a 400 attempt year or 350 attempt year. It might be 450. Maybe it's 500. We don't know where that number is going to slot in, but we expect the passing offense as a whole to, one, be better, and two, for Lamar to have more of a sample size in that area. So I think for Baltimore, they've set him up in a way where they added the weapons around him. I think a lot of people, myself included, have been begging this organization for so long to add a receiver, and not a Seth Roberts, not a Sammy Watkins or a Des Bryant, but one of those star level players. Now, Odell, there's still a lot to be seen in terms of, can he get back to some form of a star? I don't think the Ravens are going to get, Giants Odell, but can he get back to some form of, oh yeah, this guy is a low end number one, high end number two receiver in an offense? And with Todd Monken, the familiarity there, that's important. Obviously, as I mentioned, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers round out a pretty solid top three. And then you have the depth this year, where if the Ravens have to lose an Odell for a game or a Rashad Bateman for a couple, or some guy goes down, it's not like they have no depth behind those guys with Devin Duvernay, Nelson Aguilar, and the other guys in that offense. Plus, again, Mark Andrews, we talked about him last week. We cannot forget about Mark Andrews in that equation. Now, the area I expect Lamar to have less volume in is the run game. With the pass offense presumably going up in attempts, I would assume that the Ravens want to take some rushing load off of Lamar. But again, that to me, where he's had over 100 carries in every single season, and he's averaged, I'd say right around the 140, 145 mark, actually probably a little lower, maybe like 130 mark, where his career high in attempts was that 176 in 2019. I would expect him maybe to hover around, even, 2021 and 2022, we only played in 12 games each of those years, had 133 carries, 112 carries. I would maybe anticipate, if Lamar plays all 17 games, his carries hovering possibly around that mark. Because at this point, you got to feed J.K. Dobbins, got to feed Gus Edwards, and there are going to be less carries to go around as a whole. So maybe instead of Lamar averaging, 11 carries a game, 12 carries a game, maybe he's averaging 7 carries a game or 8 carries a game, because you don't want to take that element completely out. It is important, because that is a big part of who Lamar is. He's good as a thrower and he's good as a runner, but I would just anticipate less in that area. And I think Baltimore's also set him up by adding Todd Monken into this equation, where the Ravens had just hit their ceiling. They'd hit their ceiling under Greg Roman. Roman should have probably been gone after last year, but the Ravens opted to get rid of Don Martindale and keep Greg Roman. My thing, and I've said this, is they should have either gotten rid of both or not gotten rid of both, and they ended up getting rid of one and not getting rid of the other. But regardless, I think Todd Monken just fits what Lamar wants in an offense a little more. I think he fits what the Ravens need to do as an offense a little bit more, because I don't think we've seen Lamar fully unleashed as a passer. And to me, it would have been a disservice if Lamar had left or he got traded or whatnot, to not see him in a Ravens uniform, not in a Greg Roman offense, to see what he could look like in an opened up passing game where the trust is there. That's another thing, where part of an MVP season is trust. It felt like Lamar and Greg Roman were clicking in that 2019 season, felt like they were on the same page. And part of the MVP season was Lamar took the league by storm. I don't think anybody was expecting Lamar to take that big of a jump, and look, credit to him, he did it. And I think everybody believed, at least myself and a lot of people believed, in Lamar's talent, that the jump he made that year was incredible. Can Lamar make another jump under Todd Monken, where teams have gotten so used to the Greg Roman offense and the running and the play clock stuff and not having the offense run through the receivers? Is this a year where Lamar takes the league by storm and the Ravens take the league by storm on offense again, in a new offensive system that just better suits Lamar, better suits the offense better? Yeah, I think that could happen. So Lamar potentially could win his second MVP this year. I think a lot of people are kind of on that Lamar MVP hype train. Look, is it a given? No, it's absolutely not. It could happen. Will it happen? I don't know. Nobody knows. It hasn't happened yet. But I feel very confident in this offense under Todd Monken in that direction. The trust we've already seen established between Lamar Jackson and Todd Monken. Lamar's working out with his receivers down in Florida. There's just the vibe is a little different this year, it feels like. And look, you can't attribute an MVP to vibes, right? You have to go out there and contribute on the field and make an impact on the field. But the way Lamar played in 2019, it's different. Every year is different. 2019, Lamar is gone. The 2019 Ravens are gone. This is about the 2023 Ravens. This is about 2023 Lamar Jackson. I have a good feeling about it. Can Lamar win a second MVP this season? Absolutely, he can, but we'll see. There are a lot of other candidates out there who could win an MVP, so we'll see what happens, but I'm excited for the offense under Lamar and Todd Monken this year, and obviously all the other guys are going to contribute on that side of the ball. Coming up in the second part of the show, though, let's flip over to talk about the defense. Marlon Humphrey, Rock Ya-Sin, and that duo. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And for me, LinkedIn's helped me with a ton of things throughout my life with, job experiences and finding the right jobs for me. And it's led me to, obviously, this wonderful job and a bunch of others as well. And, for me, it's easy to create a job post on LinkedIn and even find a job post on LinkedIn. All you have to do is add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. And they have simple tools you can use like screening questions to make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experiences so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. And it's really important to start the year strong, and the right team member can help you do that. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one is delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens on Monday. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you again. 5 days a week Ravens content on Locked On Ravens. Thank you for tuning in. And this is coming after my week of a villain arc on Ravens Twitter, where I did start bench cuts for the entire week last week for the holiday weekend, 4th of July holiday weekend, or the week, I guess. So happy belated 4th of July week. But what I did is, I put a list of 3 or 4 players out and I said, start 1, bench 1, and cut 1, or start 2, bench 1, and cut 1. And I did, the first one I did was Ravens receiver. So Derek Mason, Anquan Bolden, Steve Smith. I did one with corners, Marlon Humphrey and Ladarius Webb and Chris McAllister. And I also put in there Jimmy Smith. And then on Wednesday, I ended up doing tight ends, Todd Heap, Mark Andrews. And then who was the other one I put in there? Dennis Pitta. Dennis Pitta was the one. And then Thursday was fullbacks, LaRon McClain, Patrick Ricard, and Vonta Leach. And then Friday was legends. And that was a doozy. I did Jonathan Ogden, Ray Lewis, and Ned Reed. So, that was my villain arc. I put the evil hood on. I was evil Kermit in the Constantine. I was Constantine last week. But let's talk corners, though. Speaking of Marlon Humphrey, let's talk corners. The Marlon Humphrey, Rock Ya-Sin duo. This is really interesting to me. These last 2 segments are actually Bleacher Report inspired because, I browse Bleacher Report every day, and they had a couple of articles out there, and they ranked the top 6 corner duos in the NFL ahead of the 2023 season. And Marlon Humphrey and Rock Ya-Sin were not on there. Just quickly, I'll read each of them out. So number 6 was Cincinnati with Mike Hilton and Chidobe Awuzie. Number 5, Tampa Bay with Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis at the 3rd. New York Jets were number 4 with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. Number 3, Miami with Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. Number 2, Dallas with Trayvon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore. Number 1 was Philadelphia, Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Now, to me, when we were talking about the duo stuff, like a couple of years ago, when Marcus Peters was still with Baltimore and, honestly was a better player than he was in 2022. He did not have a great year. People were, the Ravens corner duo was number 1, number 2 for a lot of people. And it was because, Marlon Humphrey himself was a top 5 corner in a lot of people's eyes. And honestly, he still should be. And honestly, might not be 4, 3, or 2 or 5 in that scenario. But he was regarded as one of the best and still is one of the best corners in the league. But it was Peters, who some people had as a top 10 corner in the league. So essentially, some people believe Baltimore had 2 top 10 corners for multiple seasons. Now, Ya-Sin is a step down from what that Marcus Peters was. And, at this point, it's fair to argue, who's better, Rock Ya-Sin or Marcus Peters. Ya-Sin fits the mold, though. He fits the Ravens mold that they're looking for at corner in the secondary. The Ravens have a type in the secondary, and they have had that for years now, and that is a physical corner or a physical secondary player They can get up into guys, is not afraid of contact. I mean, Rock Ya-Sin is a former wrestling star. He's suplexing guys on the field. Now, those are penalties, by the way, but that's his physicality. Not super, like, he's not a high turnover guy in terms of he's going to go out there and get you like 7 interceptions a season, but he's someone who was around the ball, pass deflections. And that, to me, is something that the Ravens value in a corner. They like the physicality aspect. Marlon Humphrey, super physical. Rock Ya-Sin, super physical. Kyle Hamilton, very physical, right? Even they drafted Kai Blue Kelly, who I talked about. And I've made this point before. They like their physical secondary players. Marcus Peters, when you look at him, very high football IQ, was a smart player, and someone that could get you a turnover by kind of baiting a quarterback into a bad throw. And the quarterback's like, oh, he wasn't there 2 seconds ago. When did he get there? That Deshaun Watson interception that he had when Deshaun Watson was still on the Texans, and he kind of baited Deshaun Watson into making a really bad throw, and Peters dove for the interception. That's the type of player Marcus Peters is. But when it comes to tackling, when it comes to physicality, that's just not his game. So I feel like Baltimore has really made an effort to get more physical in their secondary. I mean, Chuck Clark was a guy, physical defensive back there, right? Marcus Williams is I think, not as physical as the other guys, but still is physical. As he, a couple big hits throughout his career, and I think he's an underrated physicality guy. But Ya-Sin, I feel like when you're ranking these corner duos, like Humphrey to me is the best player out of Trevon Diggs, Jalen Ramsey, Sauce Gardner, all these guys, Darius Slay. Marlon Humphrey is the best player out of those, but I think when you're ranking duos, Rock Ya-Sin is not better than the secondary guys, right? He's not better than Xavier Howard or James Bradbury or Stephon Gilmore Mike Hilton's the guy, because Mike Hilton's a slot corner. Mike Hilton's my favorite slot corner. I love Mike Hilton. He's my favorite slot corner in the league, and it's unfortunate he's played for 2 AFC North franchises in Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and not in Baltimore. But that's the one where it's like, oh, well, outside we're slot guys, and kind of where's that going? But for what the Ravens need right now, the duo of Humphrey and Ya-Sin is, I think, fine, right? They don't have to be a top 6 duo this year together. But you know what you're going to get out of Humphrey, and hopefully Ya-Sin can be a mid to high tier second corner in that defense. It's what I talked about last week with the other players. And who knows, right? Who knows if a guy like, there have been reports, is Anthony Averett going to come back? Or are they going to sign a slot guy like Chris Harris Jr. or someone of that nature? But I don't know. Bryce Callahan's another one of those options. Humphrey and Ya-Sin is going to be fine for what they want. And they want to play that physical brand of football. They have physical players on all 3 levels of their defense, the sideline to sideline speed. I mean, the one play, and this doesn't all have to do with the secondary. The play against Atlanta, where there was, I think, a sweet play to Tyler Algier, and Marlon Humphrey and Roquan Smith just collapse. They absolutely collapse on Tyler Algier and stuff him in the backfield for a loss. They want those fast physical players that can get over blocks quickly and shut things down at the line, especially in the run game, where sometimes those less physical players, they get washed out of plays, they get pushed back. I mean, look, this is, again, a weird example, but Tyler Linderbaum against Devin White, where I'm not saying that, look, Devin White had a pretty rough year in 2022, but if you just get worked off the line on every single play like Devin White did, and Devin White's a linebacker, not a member of the secondary, so it's a little different, but you don't want to get your guys outworked on the line. And for Marcus Peters, look, I will always remember from him, it was like the second or third play of the game. I think Marcus Peters, his best game as a Raven was that divisional loss to Tennessee when the Ravens were 14-2 in 2019. When they lost that divisional game to Tennessee, I thought Marcus Peters was the best player on the field for the Ravens. There were a couple other guys who played well, but Marcus Peters, to me, he was physical, and he solo tackled Derrick Henry by himself on the third play of the game or second play of the game, was all fired up. And then when Derrick Henry broke through the defense for what would have been a long touchdown run, it was Marcus Peters. Marcus Peters was the one to solo tackle him down when he was breaking away for what would have been a touchdown. So I will always remember that Marcus Peters game. But I think that the Humphrey Ya-Sin duo for the Ravens this year is fine for what they need. They don't need to have 2 top 10 corners this year. The other areas of the defense are strong for the most part. Again, edge is kind of a concern for me. Corner is a little bit of a concern too outside of those top 2 guys. But they have enough talent in other places, like on the defensive line with Justin Madubuike, Travis Jones, Project Washington, with linebacker Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith, and even guys like Adafe Owe, David Ojabo in the edge room if they can step up. Obviously, safety with Hamilton and Williams. Humphrey and Yassin is fine, and Humphrey is an amazing player, one of the best corners in this league, if not the best. And Yassin, I think, would be a solid option for him as well. But coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk Zay Flowers. Was he the right pick based off of early indications? So we should have stayed tuned. Plenty to talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs, and Bird Dogs make you look good. And look, I know it because I own a few pairs of them. Bird Dog stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of that stiff, restricting cotton. And for me, I like freedom of movement. So that restricting stuff can be a little troubling, but Bird Dogs fixed the issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. My nickname is Khaki Kev, or at least one of them is Khaki Kev. So the khaki look, I do appreciate Bird Dogs for getting that right. And Bird Dogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL, enter promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order, and I highly recommend getting in on that tumbler. It's pretty sweet. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off, we promise you. We're back here, our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, talking Ravens, of course, 5 days a week. I'm trying to hammering that point home. So again, if you're an everyday, you listen every day, I appreciate you. If you're new to the channel, be sure to like this video, subscribe as well, turn those notifications on so you know when we premiere these videos. And we do live shows. We're going to be doing live shows after every preseason game, after every regular season game. If there's another signing, we'll go live, and that's where I can engage with the chat. You can comment in there, so be sure to turn notifications on as well. And also audio form. Do not forget about audio form. It's the same show, both audio and video. So if one day you want to listen to me in audio form, you're on your way to work in the car, and then the next day you want to watch me on YouTube, it's the same show. You're not missing anything there. But let's talk Zay Flowers. Flowers is someone, obviously 22nd pick in this draft, and has already looked the part. He's looked like someone who's going to have a major role in this offense, has major offensive rookie of the year potential. That's another show we'll do probably sometime this week, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But Flowers is someone, there's a lot of conversation. We've already gotten, I said these last two segments, both the Humphrey Yassin one and this one, Bleacher Report inspired. Bleacher Report's already done a 2023 redraft, which is kind of crazy considering there has not been one single snap played, even preseason, by any player in the 2023 draft class. But for Baltimore, you can always talk about, well, was this guy the right pick? Was he the wrong pick? But look, let's be honest here. We're not going to know that for a couple of years where, did some guys the Ravens pass on perform better than Zay Flowers? Did they maybe dodge a bullet with some players they didn't take? So we will never know this, and we're not going to know right now. But the hypothetical of what we've seen so far from Zay Flowers and what we've heard so far about Zay Flowers, I feel a lot better. Not that I didn't feel good about it. I felt really good when it happened, but I feel even better about it now than I did when it happened, because Zay Flowers seems to already be a perfect fit with what the Ravens want to do. It seems like he's already bought in and, has since draft night bought into the Ravens culture, bought into the Ravens offense. He was interviewed for the Ravens Wired minicamp edition, and already talking with the coaches and loving the coaches, saying, he loves Coach Todd and feels like he fits, which is very important. It feels like he's bought in already, as I talked about. But what the Ravens wanted is a guy who's a 3-level receiver, what Zay Flowers is: short game, intermediate game, and deep passing game, all something Zay Flowers can do. But the route running is there. And the comp that you see, and the comp that a lot of people have said, is Steve Smith. And some people, see that more than others. I'm like in the middle. I can see what people are saying, but I want to wait until we put those comparisons out there. Zay Flowers has a long way to go to have that Steve Smith career. Again, he has not played a snap yet, by the way. But I do think he was the right pick. Now, the redraft that Bleacher Report did, Zay Flowers goes 21 to the Chargers. So they took Quentin Johnson in the real draft, and instead of taking Quentin Johnston, they took Zay Flowers. 22, Jordan Addison's still on the board. The Ravens took Jaden Reed out of Michigan State, who ended up being the 50th pick. And the reasoning behind it was that it was because of everything that we've seen in minicamp and workouts. And Jordan Addison's kind of been sidelined with an injury. So, the Bleacher Report decided to go with Jaden Reed instead, which would not have been my pick. I would have gone Jordan Addison. But I think when we look back on this draft, I think the Ravens are going to feel very fortunate that got Zay Flowers where they did. I remember the reports. I can't remember how many weeks or months out it was for the draft, but it was, well, New England is eyeing Zay Flowers, and maybe teams are viewing Zay Flowers as the best receiver in this class. Obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigba went 20th to Seattle. It was that 4 straight wide receiver 1 with Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, and Jordan Addison. But I think Zay Flowers does have the potential to finish, when all 4 of those careers are over, to finish his career as the best receiver in this class. And it wasn't particularly a super strong receiver class like 2 years ago when it was Garrett Wilson and Jameson Williams and Chris Olave and Drake London and all those guys. Like that last year's draft was pretty good in terms of receivers. And it felt like the Ravens, after essentially agreeing to the trade to move on from Marquise Brown last year, maybe wanted one of those guys, but there was just such a run. They took Kyle Hamilton instead, which I'm fine with that. But the right pick to me in that situation, it was, corner and wide receiver were their 2 biggest needs, even after signing Odell. They felt like they could revamp their offense even further by adding Zay Flowers. So people who wanted a corner in that situation, obviously Joey Porter Jr. was someone who I would have been very happy with at 22. But I think that Zay Flowers has so much potential, especially in this offense, and being a number 3 option, right? This is not like Zay Flowers is coming in. It's not like Rashad Bateman was asked to, Rashad Bateman last year was asked to be the number 1 in his second season. It's a pretty tall task, but the Ravens now have other options with Beckham, with Bateman, Duvernay, and Aguilar. They've surrounded, it's not like they purposely, it wasn't like they, build the offense around Zay Flowers. That's not what it was, but they have surrounded Zay Flowers with guys, both veterans and players, around his age, where he's going to be set up very well, and all the attention is not going to be on him. And again, can't forget about Mark Andrews and what he brings to the table as well. So look, early returns, I say Zay Flowers is the right pick. You can't draft who is already drafted, and the other guys, you could make an argument. The guy who I really, really wanted, and those who have been with me for a while now know this, Christian Gonzalez, the fact that the Patriots took him where they did broke my heart. I thought Baltimore was going to trade up for him. And I first of all thought Pittsburgh traded up to take him, but Christian Gonzalez fell farther than I thought he would. Christian Gonzalez in this defense would have been incredible. Talk about corner duos, or even you could go trio at that point with Marlon Humphrey, Rock Ya-Sin, and Christian Gonzalez. And who knows if they sign Ya-Sin if they take Gonzalez. But man, that would have been crazy. But look, you can't draft a guy who's already taken. So for me, Zay Flowers, at this point, I'll label him as the right pick. Now, again, we can't truly do that until he plays a couple snaps, but I'm excited to see him in this offense. I'm excited to see him mentored by Odell. The same thing with Rashad Bateman. I'm excited to see Odell's veteran presence kind of help these young guys take shape as NFL receivers and work Zay Flowers into a role. Flowers is by far going to be the player in the draft classes here for Baltimore who has the biggest role. I've talked about that before. Flowers is going to make an impact for this team this year, on a team that is contending, on a team that is trying to contend for a Super Bowl. It's no easy task to do that, but I'm confident that Flowers has the ability to do so. And his electric skill set, the ability to break ankles as a route runner, to me, that is very important. It's a skill set overall, because again, where do you line him up? Is these inside-outside guys where, can you line him outside? Can you line him inside? I'd expect to see him a lot in the slot this year, but I'm sure we will see some outside snaps from him. So I am very excited about Zay Flowers and what he can bring to this offense for sure. That's all I have here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll get back here tomorrow. More Ravens content. Be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.